As you look around you, you see all these flags representing all of those people who gave the last full measure. We see our United States flag. It's hidden by the trees as it flies over there. One of the things that I've come to realize in my life is that that flag has meaning. It's a symbol, but it has meaning. And throughout my life, that flag didn't always mean the same thing to me. When I was a child, I was about maybe a third or fourth grade, I used to play football at my school. My dad used to come to pick me up, and one day he forgot to come and get me. So in a child's mind, I rode the bus every day back and forth to school. So to me, it was very obvious how to get home. I could see it in my mind's eye how to get there. So I started walking. It took me about 3 hours to get home that day. But as I was walking, there was a point during that walk when I started to think to myself, I might need a little bit of help. Maybe I should go to a house, knock on somebody's door to see if I can find some help. And as I was walking, I remember one of the places where the bus would let some of the other kids off. So I walked down that road looking, and as I walked through that community, I saw a lot of American flags. I saw flags outside of people's houses, and I saw flags flying. And when I saw those flags, I turned around and walked the other way. Those flags did not instill pride in me. They instilled fear. I remember as a young kid watching TV, and I remember seeing all of these men in these hooded robes and these pointed hats, walking in large, basically armies. And they had the Confederate battle flag on one side, they had the US American flag on the other, and they had a whole lot of them interspersed in between each other. And at that moment in time, that flag, the US flag, was a symbol to them. It meant something to them. And by their carrying those flags and marching that way in the speeches they made, they were sending a message. I got the message. I understood what they were saying loud and clear. So wherever I saw an American flag, it instilled fear, because that was the message I got. That's what it meant to me. One of the things that's interesting about the American flag is that it means so many different things to different people. When I think about all of the soldiers here who gave their last full measure, that flag meant something to them. When I think about the people who were here in Fredericksburg and Richmond and Petersburg, when the Federal Army arrived and they saw that flag coming, it meant something to them. When I think about the enslaved people who were at the plantations and they saw that flag coming, and immediately the people in the plantations began to flee, and it put the enslaved in a better position to be able to gain their freedom, that flag meant something different to them. I think about the people who were in Savannah and Atlanta when General Tecumseh began to march down his way. And the word of what he was doing as he came preceded them. That flag meant something different to them. I often think about World War I, World War II mainly, because that's the one I remember when I was growing up. That's the one I saw the movies about that was closest to me. And all the soldiers that went off to fight in that war, that flag meant something different to them. When I watched some people trying to say, oh, it's just a symbol, and they began to burn the American flag, and I saw how those vets just went crazy because of what they fought for, what they seen their friends and their loved ones die for, what people lost limbs for, what people's lives were completely changed over, they believed in. That flag had a different meaning to them. It wasn't just a piece of cloth and a bunch of colors. It meant something to them. And it's something peculiar happened to me. One of the things I like to talk about with the National Park Service, one of the things I think that makes us so great, this makes us better than Disney, it makes us better than Hollywood and any place else, is because we tell a story, right? A true story, but we tell it in the places where it happened. We can actually show you the dead from this war. We can show you where they lie. We can show you where they fought. We can show you the earthenworks that they built in order to protect themselves behind. We can show you the places where they had their headquarters. We can show you all of these things. So we not only can tell you a story, we have evidence. We have proof. It's not just a story. It's the very thing that makes a hair stand up on the back of your head. When somebody tells you something is happening, when somebody tells you that a soldier was here fighting, and you look down on the ground and you can see percussion caps, you can actually see evidence of that battle. That's compelling, and that's real, and that's what makes the National Park Service different than any other agency. Well, for me, when I was a kid, I used to watch all those battles. I loved watching the World War II. I loved watching Pappy Boyington, and the Black Sheep. And I loved watching John Wayne and the Leathernecks. That's where I got my first introduction to the Seabees, the fighting Seabees and John Wayne. I loved to watch that until I began to get the message I didn't belong. But when I began to read about the Rhode Island Regiment, which was a black unit that fought with General Washington during the Revolutionary War. And as I began to learn about the 54th Massachusetts, which was my introduction to the USCTs, United States Colored Troops, as I began to learn about every war that every African American served in, from the very beginning of this country to Colin Powell, it gave me a different viewpoint. It was evidence that I belonged. It was evidence that I was here. It was evidence that I had a place. When I watched those movies and I watched the Black Sheep flying in those planes, I loved to watch them fly in those Mustangs. And although I might not have seen anybody there that looked like me, I knew somewhere over the horizon I was out there flying that Mustang, or I was flying a bomber. And then a very peculiar thing happened to me. Very, very peculiar. And I thank God that I had the experience, because I wouldn't know it, right? When I began to embrace those stories, when I began to embrace those men, those women that served, I began to embrace the whole. I don't know when it happened. I didn't just embrace the black troops. I embraced the whole country, warts and all. I embraced everything that we were about, everything that we were trying to be, every place we were trying to go, every message we were trying to send. I embraced it, because I saw myself somewhere in the tapestry, number one, and number two, because the stories that people told me, the evidence didn't bear it out. It wasn't true. It is so important that we tell everybody's story. And the funny thing is, when I was a kid, I did not need to know those stories. It wasn't until somebody told me I didn't belong that I need evidence that I did belong. Because prior to that, when I saw, John Wayne, when I saw Pappy Boyington, I didn't think about me not belonging. It wasn't until somebody told me I didn't belong that I needed to see evidence that I did. And one of the things that I think truly makes this country great, I don't know if you remember the code talkers, the Native Americans who served during World War II, and one of the things that made what they did truly astounding, one of the things that made their code so difficult to break, was that it was rooted in their language. And it was a language that was very unique to this country, to this land, and no one could break it. One of the things that makes this country so different is how different we are and how we can come together to accomplish a mission together. And it makes us so unique and so different. One of the things that I want you to remember as I close in this speech is that when you look around at that flag in and of itself, that piece of cloth with those colors, doesn't have meaning. But what gives that flag meaning is what you do. The reason why that flag has meaning is because of what people do behind it. That flag had meaning to so many people in Europe when the United States Army came marching through in World War II, because it meant liberation and it meant freedom. That flag struck terror in the hearts of Nazis because it meant freedom. That flag is different meaning to different people, but it's based upon what we do behind it. It's based on what you do. It's based on what I do. It means something to people outside the country. It means something to people in this country. We give that flag meaning. It's not static. It's not intrinsic. It changes. depending upon what we do, how we stay behind it, unite behind it, or fall apart. The flag has meaning. And I would encourage you to continue to give that flag meaning, because every one of these soldiers in here gave the last full measure on both sides, gave the last full measure. Thank you.